The next group to talk to you about their work, a group that is really working within the bounds of the high-risk infant flagship. It's a cross-theme flagship, and Jeannie Chong is going to lead a panel discussion to explain some of the things that they're doing now. Over to you.
My name's Annabelle. I'm 8 years old. I have cerebral palsy. I'm here to talk to Professor Christine Imms, who knows a lot about it. Hi, Christine. Tell me a bit more about cerebral palsy.
Okay, so in Australia, there's around about 34,000 people who have cerebral palsy, and that's adults and children. Some kids with cerebral palsy will have trouble moving parts of their body. In fact, that's probably the one thing that all kids with cerebral palsy have trouble with. That some part of their body might not move as well as other parts of their body. It might be a bit stiff or a bit shaky. But other kids also have other things that are hard to do. Sometimes it's hard to do the thinking that you want to do, or the learning that you want to do, or maybe the talking you want to do. So different kids have different difficulties.
Are you working on any breakthroughs?
So there's a lot of work going across the Murdoch Children's Research Institute around trying to work out how do we prevent babies from having cerebral palsy so that they can grow up without cerebral palsy. So that's really important. But we're also investigating what's the very best way that we can help children develop in the best ways that they can and do what they are doing. Being able to participate in the things that you want to do is what makes a good life. That's what makes it fun to be a kid or to be an adult, and it's how we learn. Means we can do the same things as everybody else. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when people have cerebral palsy or another disability, it's really hard to participate in the same way as other people. And so we really have to think about how to fix our environments and our spaces and our people and their attitudes so that people can participate how they want to participate.
You do a lot of things in cerebral palsy, I can see.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jeannie Chong. I'm a neonatologist, or more fondly known as a baby doctor. And for the next 25 or so minutes, the baby team within the Murdoch Children's Research Institute will give you a flavor of what we've been up to. I just want you to take a minute or so just to pause and reflect. So you've just received some news that someone's had a new baby. What's your immediate reaction? Well, for most of us, it's a feeling of joy, a feeling of elation, a feeling of pride if you are, a member of the family, a grandparent, and I know a few of you out there are grandparents. And then thoughts about, sleepless nights, baby crying, baby feeding. And then visions of this baby growing up to become a child at school, and then heaven help us adolescents, even though we've heard in the last session, they are the hope of the future. And then to become boring adults, as we've also heard from the last section. So these are the common visions that come to mind when you think about a new life that has entered the world. However, that is not always the case. I'm not great at technology. I am pressing the green one, and there we go. So when I formally came on campus in 2019, I was charged with bringing together a group of like-minded people within clinical sciences and hopefully beyond to launch a flagship that focused on the very start of life, our infants, our newborns. And we called ourselves a high-risk infant flagship. And this is really our mission that you see up here. But why high-risk infants? And I think this comes back to my point that not all babies enter the world in that sort of lovely story that I painted. Fortunately, that happens for majority of births, but we do know that 1 in 10 babies are born preterm, early, before nature programmed them to face the big bad world. And that's about 26,500 in Australia, and to put a global slant to it, 13.4 million babies are born early. About 20% of these babies need help at birth with their breathing and with their transition. And 18% of babies who are born are admitted to a neonatal intensive or special care nursery to receive additional help because they are unwell. All these babies have a higher risk of health and developmental problems long term. And it is our mission within the flagship to try and help these babies and their families to achieve their full potential. Now, I believe this person's work may have been referred to earlier already, but this is James Heckman, the economist. And what is an economist doing at a Children's Research Center symposium? Well, he very cleverly pointed out that you get the greatest gains from investing early. And many of us will say in children, but for us, the baby team, it's from the very start of life for babies. And when we think about how we would like to optimize outcomes for babies and their families, this is the sort of journey that they walk after birth. And we felt that we wanted to bring in a personalized precision approach to the flagship. And we've roughly, at this stage of the flagship, thought about it in 2 arms. One is to bring more precision in identifying babies who will have problems later, because even though their risk may be higher, not all have problems. So precision in prediction, and my colleague David Tingay will tell you a little bit more about the work he's doing in that space. And then finally, of course, if children are at risk of longer-term health and developmental challenges, we would like to be able to identify them and offer them the intervention. But once again, not a one-size-fits-all package, but a more personalized package tailored to the individual child. And we've got here a team from the intervention working group who are going to tell you a bit more about their work. So enough from me. This is the whole team, lots of people I'd like to thank, but I particularly like to thank Joanna Cobb and Jamie Owen, our program managers, who really pulled together the slides and organize all of us to make sure that we keep working towards that ultimate goal of optimizing the health and development for our vulnerable infants. So over to David.
Thanks very much, Jeannie. I'm going to start the neonatal journey where the neonatal journey often starts, which is talk a little bit about birth. So birth is fundamentally a breathing event. And for the millions of preterm infants born globally every year, this is an event that they are ill-equipped for. Their lungs are small, they're not yet developed, they're fragile, and they need help with the process of inflating their lungs and expiring their lungs, which we're all taking for granted right now as we sit here. At birth, we lack the high-level technologies available to us in the NICU. And there is no evidence to support much of the things we do to help babies in the delivery room. To understand how best to deliver safe and effective support for the preterm lung at birth, we have been breaking down the fundamental breathing problems babies face, specifically how to prevent the preterm lung from collapsing between each breath it takes at birth, how much we should be inflating the preterm lung with each breath, and how fast or gently we should be allowing that inflation to occur. And by doing this, we hope that we can develop new treatments. But the preterm lung is a dilemma because that fragility means that the supportive and often life-saving treatments we can be giving are going to cause injury if they are given inappropriately. And that lung injury can be the spark to a lifetime of lung problems. So in our group, by linking detailed lung imaging with the molecular events that are occurring in the lung, we've been able to determine how the preterm lung responds to different clinical decisions in the delivery room. And by doing this basic science, we have been able to develop strategies that we believe may help us better treat the different breathing problems preterm babies are facing at birth. For example, we've established the POLAR trial, which is currently the largest international delivery room trial of a new respiratory treatment that's been performed to date. And the POLAR trial uses a method in which the clinicians get feedback from the baby to find the right pressure needed to prevent lung collapse after birth. And this baby-led approach is simple to apply and uses technology that's already in delivery rooms globally. Thanks to the amazing work and perseverance of Laura and Richard and Cara and others at the Melbourne the Children's Trial Centre, we're hoping to be able to finish recruitment in 2025. But the risks to the preterm lung don't end in the delivery room, and the preterm infant must negotiate a long and torturous course through the NICU, with many opportunities for further lung injury. This year, we've been very lucky to be awarded a grant to allow us to try to understand why some preterm babies do well and others develop lung injury, even when they're being treated with the same evidence-based therapies. We're going to be working with NICUs across Victoria to recruit and study a cohort of preterm infants from birth to 2 years using a combination of clinical, lung imaging and proteomics data to define the different preterm lung phenotypes, predict the early lung events, and hopefully develop targeted treatments before lung injury is established. And we believe that by doing so, we can substantially reduce lung damage in the preterm babies across Victoria, setting them up for stronger lungs as they go throughout the rest of their lives. Thank you, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Tricia Prentice.
Thanks, David. Good afternoon, everyone. So in addition to thinking about the right types of treatment that we provide in the NICU, as Jeannie said, we also want to be thinking about the right types of interventions that are going to help our high-risk infants to thrive once they graduate from the NICU environment. And this is where Bundle for Kids comes in. That's his team, sorry. So Bundle for Kids is a co-designed project. So we're partnering with families with lived experience to develop a personalised or individualised approach to healthcare delivery for infants and children at risk of developmental challenges. Now, our families are very much at the heart of what we do, and so are our families. And we're really delighted to have here with us today one of our co-researchers and mum, Steph Gaffke. Now, you can see on these pictures that we have two of the children of our co-researchers. We have on the left, we have Thomas, who is Steph's son, and on the right we have Jack. Now, it may look a little bit deceiving that Thomas and Jack may look like they're actually on similar levels of life support, but in reality, their underlying medical and surgical conditions are very, very different. And so we can anticipate that beyond the NICU environment, that they're also going to have very different needs in order to get them to the point where Jack is on the right of being a thriving toddler. Now again, Jack's smile is a little bit deceptive in that Jack still has a number of health challenges that he needs support with, and his mum, Jess, has had to work really hard in advocating in order that he can receive those supports. So it's really important that we listen to our families about what are meaningful outcomes to them. What is it that actually is a life where Jack's thriving to them and to him? Now, partnering with our families means that we can actually know what are meaningful interventions, that we can have greater confidence in knowing that the interventions that we put in place are going to be acceptable and feasible when we apply them to families who are running really busy schedules, trying to get kids to soccer or to school activities. It also means that we can focus on what are going to be the right outcomes. But of course, 3 families' voices are not enough, and so we need to work really hard to get many voices and very diverse perspectives. And so that requires multiple levels of stakeholder engagement. Now, I want to acknowledge, just as we heard earlier, that partnering with families and patients can be really messy and complex. It takes time and energy. It means that we actually have to be prepared to be flexible and adaptable and really be willing to not just listen, but to allow all those voices to actually impact every part of the project. It means that we have to actually be willing to let go of our preconceived ideas about what an intervention bundle could look like, should look like, and allow the families to really shape what that is going to look like for them. Hopefully that means that by the time we get to the pilot phase, we'll be in a really confident place of hopefully our intervention bundle being something that will be feasible and acceptable. And then when we take it through to a definitive trial, we'll be measuring it against outcomes that are meaningful to our families. Now, we are very much at the early phases of this project, and so we have much to learn. We're delighted that the MCRI is partnering across the campus in a campus-wide strategy when they think about consumer engagement. And I want to take the opportunity to give a big shout out to Ken. I think I can see him hiding up the back. Give a wave, Ken. Ken and his team are an absolute treasure trove of resources. So if you're thinking about partnering with families or patients, do reach out to Ken and his team, who will very much link you in with a community of people who are passionate about this type of work. We're also, as a team, learning from one another. And so I want to hand over to a couple of my other collaborators, both Kate Cameron, who is a postdoctoral researcher, but also Steph Gaffke, who is one of our parent researchers, to hear a bit more about their experience of what it's like to partner in this way.
Thanks very much, Tricia. So my role in this research team, alongside Kerry Robertson and Tricia, is to work closely with our parent investigators. And my experience has really underlined the principle, nothing about us without us. Having parent investigators on the team really does make a huge difference to the direction projects take and makes research better. The parent perspective really helps target research towards what is important to families. So as we've heard today, many, if not all groups across MCRI are engaging with children and their families in all aspects of research. So I'm just really quickly going to outline how our team is doing it before handing over to Steph, who'll be able to give her perspective as a parent and what sort of motivated her to be involved. So for our parents in our team, it involves everything from attending meetings where we share decision making, have opportunity to discuss and share ideas, to anything including co-facilitating focus groups, which I think is what Steph was doing yesterday. So a specific example from our project is around how we put together the consultation project with our stakeholders that Tricia referred to previously. So we want to find out from our stakeholders which developmental domains and health outcomes are priorities for children, and we're looking at children aged 2 to 5 who spent time in some NICU, and how we can deliver those interventions in a way that is feasible, acceptable, and works for the families that we work with. So the 3 parent investigators on our team, Steph, Jess, and Sharon, they are involved right from the start of this consultation process. Everything from who we were asking, so which stakeholders were we engaging with, which parents, which healthcare professionals did we need to ask, what we were asking, so what could we learn from our stakeholders, what information did we really need to make these bundles, these interventions workable, but also how we asked that, so what sort of formats we were asking parents and healthcare professionals in, as well as the language and the accessibility of how we went about that. So just this sort of start of our research project, this component, the parent investigators have had a really significant input. and really changed the research for the better. And now that we're at the stage of analysing our stakeholder consultation, we can really just see how much richer the data is and how valuable the parent perspective is going to be moving forwards in the co-design, making sure that we design interventions that work for families to improve outcomes that are meaningful for them. So I'd like to hand over to Steph to speak about her motivation to be involved in our team and her experiences.
Hey everyone, sorry, this is very much outside my normal day as a landscaper. So I have a now 2-year-old son who has Bacterial Association. He spent several weeks in the NICU at the Royal Children's Hospital, and I was lucky enough to meet Trisha there. Once we were home and settled, I was asked to be a part of this project, which I couldn't say no. I'll always be indebted to what Trisha and the team at the Royal Children's Hospital did for our son. I really enjoy being a part of this team. It has significant meaning to me as a son who was born high risk. The parents, so Jess, Sharon and I, help with making sure that the content that is going out, so surveys and things like that, is understandable to parents. So although we spend significant time in appointments and at the hospitals, we don't have the understanding of a lot of the language that can be used in this sort of thing. So we play a part in making sure that it's understandable and isn't too triggering for families. Some topics that we ask about can be hard to discuss, so it's really important that we have the appropriate approach when asking the questions.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not sure what to say.
I think it's only fitting that Steph got the loudest and longest applause. As you can see, it was hard for her and triggering too. And I've certainly learned a lot along the way as we've engaged families. Now, I've got 5 minutes for questions, and I challenge at least one person to please come to the mic whilst I ask the first question. So I'll ask the first question to David. So David, that first, the study you had with the POLAR trial where you were able to titrate the support given to a baby in real time, do you see that, how do you see that being applied more globally, rather than just in a high-income country like Australia? I've got the global slant here, Andrew, so yes.
Well, I can firstly say that I know it can be applied because I've just got back from Italy and met people in Italy and elsewhere in Europe have all said we are applying it, that are part of the trial, and it was nowhere near as hard as we thought. And I think that's the barrier. The concept of going in to the delivery room as the clinician who says, I know what this baby needs because I'm the clinician, I think is a false one. We've all learnt, you and I, in our careers, that babies are always smarter than us, they always know better, and actually if we listen to them, it tends to turn out to be better. The barrier is not so much the acknowledgement that we need to listen, it's how do we listen, and giving clinicians the tools. And I think clinicians are the ones that are most reticent to being given the tools to listen and trusting they exist, but they do exist, and it comes then down to training. And I think the fact that we've managed to take this trial into a delivery room and it's predominantly been done by junior doctors, I think speaks to the fact that I'm fairly confident that we can translate it out.
So it sounds like there's a potential inter-campus collaboration in a few years once the POLAR trial results are known. Do I see a brave person standing there? Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you. That was a really excellent series of talks. I was wondering what the biggest learning you had about going through that co-design process was and what sort of challenges or things you'll take into the next phase are. Thank you.
Who's the question directed to?
All of you.
All. 1 point from each then, please.
I'm going to make a comment and also put it as a question to Steph. So I think we're very much in the early phases, so we're definitely learning all the way along and still have plenty to learn. I think as a clinician researcher, as you heard, I was actually involved in Thomas's care within the NICU. I wasn't his primary physician, but as a clinician, it makes me worry about the power dynamics that Amy rose earlier. We worry about, how much are we, making families get involved, putting extra pressure on them. Steph's got a new baby, they've got a big business. Like, what kind of pressures are we putting on families who are already navigating the system? And how do we manage those power dynamics? And I don't know that we always get it right. Sometimes I think we worry about it too much. Sometimes I think we don't worry about it enough. Sometimes we recognise it, sometimes we don't. So trying to work out how we balance that is a big challenge. And maybe I'll hand over to Steph and see if she wants to comment.
No? So over to Kate.
All right, thank you for the question. As Tricia said, we very much are in the early stages of the co-design. I think probably the biggest learning for me, and I think Tricia's in on this as well, as sort of generally type A research personalities, is it is a big learning curve to sort of lose that control a little bit of even knowing where this is going to go and just trust that process and do the best that you can to sort of do the best, I'm not going to phrase this very well, just the best job to do each stage of the research to a high quality, knowing that it is going to get there in the end. And even at this first stage, like, we've learned so much from our stakeholder consultation and we're still in the middle of it. So.
It makes even practicalities of putting in ethics protocols challenging when you don't even know what the next stage is really going to look like. It gives them lots of fun.
Now, there's a second question. Do I have the luxury of that, Sarah, or not? The luxury of a second quick question, please.
Sorry, hopefully it'll be quick. Thanks for all the great talks. I don't know who I'm going to direct this one to, so maybe you can pick. But I just wanted to hear more about how you tailored the content and information towards the parents and how you avoided sort of triggering them and engage them in the best way. Do you go about that sort of, is it just through the parents or do you engage with like a psychologist as well? Just want to hear more about it. Thanks.
I'm being given the 1 minute mark, so can I make two suggestions? One, it's a multidisciplinary team effort. And second, can I get you to engage Kate and Tricia directly at lunchtime? Because I would really like the final word to come from Steph. Steph, what's your one piece of advice to all of us in this room in regard to engaging parents in the work that we do?
Thank you. I think it's really important to engage in parents that are confident enough to speak up. Those who have potentially advocated pretty strongly for their child while they've been pretty unwell, very unwell in the NICU, and to be able to listen to their lived experiences and understand that it is sensitive to talk about it, but listening to the lived experiences as parents, we really see the gaps in the system and where we do need to bring more interventions in to help.
Thank you very much. Look, thank you everyone for the session. It is now time to replenish your hypoglycemia. Lunch is served outside. There are posters. Please be back at 2 for genetics. 2:15 for genetics. Thank you.